Hello, everyone. Brad, are you there on the line? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I
Okay,
can.
great. All right. Looks like we're ready to get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and maybe in some places, good night. I see you all are using the chat feature and saying hello. So we've got people all over the place, all over the country. In the US, I see some people from Canada, from New Zealand, just everywhere, Austria. So anyway, welcome you to everybody to our first LHSA International Leica Society webinar. My name is Richard Rahino, and I'm the Executive Director for the Society. As this is a member-only event, I want to thank each of you for joining us today and for supporting the LHSA. Your membership is very important to us, and the board of directors is constantly working very hard to earn your support through various programs, our website, in-person meetings, our Pride and Joy, the Viewfinder magazine, as well as other programs. So thank you for supporting us. Also wanted to just give you a little teaser to be on the lookout in May for our annual sweepstakes announcement. Our grand prize is going to be the much sought after new Leica N10 monochrome. We'll also have a few other prizes as well, but that is our big prize. So be on the lookout for that. And before I turn it over to our presenter, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. First, everyone is muted or should be muted for the meeting. This is to avoid any confusion or unnecessary noises that may interrupt the presentation. So please check your audio and make sure that you are muted. Second, we'll have some Q&A period. And if you have questions that come up during the presentation, you can type them into the chat. We also have some questions that have been emailed to us beforehand. So you'll be able to, or we'll address those and as many others as we can. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded so that if you miss something, you'll be able to go back and view it later. Our class today is organizing your photos using Adobe Lightroom, and our presenter is Brad Husick. Brad is a LHSA board member and professional photographer with more than 40 years experience. Brad's photos have been published in several magazines as well as the New York Times. He was the mission photographer for the first private space flight, Spaceship One, and a sports photographer for 3 years. He often writes camera, software, and lens reviews for online sites and teaches extensively for groups and individuals. Let's all give a silent but virtual welcome to Brad.
Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate it. I understand that you're supposed to wear a mask during these times of coronavirus, so this one's been working pretty well for me so far. People stay away from me when I wear this. For the purpose of video, I think we should probably just get rid of that. Everybody can hear me okay, Richard?
Yeah.
Ian here, okay? Well, great. I want to welcome everybody and echo Richard's comments. We value you as members, and we're glad you're here. It's a nice break, I think, from all the news about coronavirus. So let's focus on photography for an hour or so together and see what we can learn. This is part one of 4 presentations that I'll be doing. There will be additional video chat presentations by other members of LHSA and other board members. This is the first of 4 parts on Lightroom. Today we're going to be covering how to organize, how to think about Lightroom, how to organize your photos, and why you should think about using Lightroom if you're not already. The other sessions will cover photo editing. It'll cover plugins, and then the final one will cover how to make a book using Lightroom and the built-in connection to Blurb. And so I welcome you to those if you can join us. We'll have them about every 2 weeks starting today. So just as a housekeeping item, if you have questions, if you've either sent them to Richard ahead of time, we did get 3 or 4 questions ahead of time, or you have questions that come up during the session, don't hesitate to type them into the chat window. we will go at the end of the hour today. I'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes where we're going to go through the chat window and answer the questions that come up. If I've already covered it during the session, that's great, but we're happy to get to your questions, and we may even go over time if there are lots and lots of questions. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, what is Adobe Lightroom? I'm going to assume, by the way, that most of you are either just getting started with Lightroom, or you tried it in the past and you kind of ran into some hurdles, or you're just getting fresh on nice and good ways to use, best practices to use Lightroom. I have used Lightroom since version 1 when it was a standalone application. It's now available online as a monthly. I am experienced with Lightroom, but in no way am I the world's expert in Lightroom. I'm going to share with you what I think are good practices and successful ways to use Lightroom, and I've worked with dozens of students on this, and it seems to work out pretty well. So the way that I use Lightroom is unique to me, and I hope that it will work for you. But as you know from using Lightroom or Photoshop or other tools, there are hundreds of ways to do the same thing, and some of you may have even better ways to do it. So I'm not claiming that it's the only way to do it, but I hope that it'll help. I'm going to share my Lightroom screen with you, and I made it large enough so I think you can read the text as I go through it, but I'll go reasonably slowly. So here we go. I'm going to share this Lightroom window with you. And I'd like to start out and say, first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this. We have 2 sponsors that make this series of webinars possible. The first is Westbourne Camera, and Westbourne has been a long-time supporter of LHSA. We love working with John, and he has a selection of new and used Leica equipment that's just incredible. So thank you so much to Westbourne for that. And our other sponsor for this webinar series is the Leica Store San Francisco. Sean Craner generously gave his support for this webinar series, and we really appreciate it. Leica Store San Francisco is a tremendous place. The next time you're in San Francisco, please stop by and say hello. So thank you to our sponsors for that. They make this possible. So what is Lightroom? Why is Lightroom a great organizing tool? Lightroom is, I think, one of the best tools out there for keeping your photos organized and editing those photos. And there are lots of other tools out there. Apple Photos, if you're on the Mac platform, it used to be called iPhoto, now called Photos. There are lots of tools on the Windows platform. But Lightroom seems to be the one that I think once you get over the initial hurdle, gives you the most flexibility, the most control, and doesn't really force you to do things in the way that they want you to do them. I've had a lot of students who use Photos or iPhoto, and it's a reasonably good tool if you want to move photos back and forth from your phone or your iPad to your Mac and vice versa. But unfortunately, Photos keeps its photographs in a proprietary database. So moving in and out of Photos can be quite problematic, especially if versions change. And I've had some nightmare situations where people have tens of thousands of photographs in Photos, and it's very difficult to get them out. So I recommend Lightroom if you have a reasonable collection of photos and you want a lot of flexibility in editing and managing those photos. Now, there are several different versions of Lightroom. The 2 that interest us, as you can see on this slide, are Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic CC. Now called Lightroom Classic, by the way. I think they dropped the CC. The main difference is that Lightroom CC is a cloud-based application. It requires you to store all of your photographs in the cloud that Adobe manages. Lightroom, it also has a simplified user interface and makes moving photographs back and forth between devices a little bit easier than Lightroom Classic. But Lightroom CC, again, all of your photographs are up on the cloud. Lightroom Classic, which is what I'm going through today and the program you're seeing, is for those of you who like to store your photographs on hard drives that you control, not only in the cloud. And at the end of this, I'll give you some ideas about the easy ways to back up the photos that you have without having to use the Adobe Cloud. So I recommend for all of you today, Lightroom Classic CC, now called Lightroom Classic, is probably the right choice. Now, the way to get a hold of Lightroom Classic is with one of Adobe's plans. And they offer a couple of plans. I think this is up to date now. The Lightroom CC plan is that Lightroom Cloud option, which is $10 a month and comes with a terabyte of cloud storage. Again, the photos have to be in the cloud, not on your computer. The middle one, which I recommend, is the photography plan. It's $10 a month. It gives you 20 gigabytes of cloud storage for moving things back and forth. But you're using Lightroom CC, Lightroom Classic, and you can manage the photos on your own hard drives. So that's the one that I subscribe to, and it's the one I recommend. It's $10 a month. It used to be that we could buy Lightroom as a standalone application, but doing that and paying $150 a year to upgrade is pretty much the same cost as just paying them $10 a month. If you need more cloud storage, they do offer the same program that includes a terabyte of cloud storage for $20 a month, an extra $10 a month. So I recommend the Adobe Photography plan, and that gives you Lightroom Classic. Okay, a couple of other resources that I want to mention before we get going. There's a lot of great places to learn more about Lightroom, and I want to recommend a few of them. Jot these down or come back to the recording of this if you want to learn more. The first one is if you like to learn by watching short videos, Julianne Cost has a series of videos on YouTube that are absolutely fantastic. Julianne is an Adobe employee. She's actually the Adobe Lightroom evangelist and probably knows more about Lightroom than any of us care to ever learn. Julianne's videos are quite short. They're 5 to 10 minutes each, and she's a terrific explainer on how to do things. So look for YouTube's Julianne Cost, K-O-S-T, Cost or Coast. The second place to learn about Lightroom is, that I recommend, is a website called the Lightroom Queen, lightroomqueen.com. And she is a fantastic resource for all things Lightroom. She has a book called Lightroom Classic, The Missing FAQ. This is available as an ebook as well as a physical book. The reason I like this is that this is not something you read from cover to cover. This is something that you look up in the index, the question you have: how do I move photos on my hard drive? How do I print this? Or what color control should I use? And she explains the answer in one page for each question. So it's sort of a reference guide to Lightroom that should have actually been written by Adobe, but was written by the Lightroom Queen. And I highly recommend picking up a copy of this book. Okay, that covers the initial introduction. So here we are. We've covered what is Lightroom and which version should I use. The answer is Lightroom Classic. Now I want to talk to you about how Lightroom works. Lightroom is a database for your photos. And it brings the power of what a database can do to organizing your photos and allowing you to manipulate those photos. So Lightroom actually points to the original location of your photos, and it contains them in a file called the catalog. You can see catalog up here. In this case, I've only just started this catalog, and it contains these 7 photographs. But Lightroom has the concept of a catalog. That's the master file for Lightroom. You can only open one catalog at a time in Lightroom, but one catalog can actually contain millions of photographs. And the reason is that the photos aren't actually stored within Lightroom. They're stored wherever you left them on your hard drive. Lightroom simply points to them. And Lightroom doesn't slow down if you have millions of photographs in the catalog, all right? So one catalog at a time. If you have hundreds of thousands of photographs and you want to split them into multiple catalogs, let's say pre-2010 and post-2010, you're welcome to do that. The search features that you get only work within a catalog. So keep that in mind as you think about whether or not to have more than one catalog. Now let's talk about the interface here. It's a little confusing for most people when they start Lightroom. There's all these windows and buttons, and I'm not sure where to start or what to go, or where to go. So we always start in the library, which is up here. And these modules, as I roll over, are just different functions in Lightroom. We always start in the library with these thumbnails, and then we go and develop individual photographs. We can put them on a map, create a book from them, create a slideshow, print them, or even create a website out of them. Today, we're going to really focus on this library module, which is where we manage our photographs. It all starts with importing photos. Now, I'm going to assume there's two places that you have photographs that you want to import. One would be from an SD card that you've just taken out of your camera. And the other would be, what about all the photos I already have on my hard drives? So I'm going to go through each of those in turn. When I take an SD card and I insert it into my reader while I'm running Lightroom, I'm going to put it in right now. Lightroom, most of the time, knows that I put a card in, and it goes and automatically chooses that card from the list of devices that I have. I have a bunch of hard drives attached to this Mac. It chose this card, which I happen to call Leica M. And if you see, there's no photos at this level of that card. So by default, what's nice to do is just include the subfolders. So when I turn the subfolders on, then I get a whole bunch of photographs I get all of them that are on the card. If that's not what I'm looking for and I want a specific part of that card, I can simply choose a folder and get those photos from that folder if you have more than one folder on the card. So let's say I want to import some of these photos. And for the purpose of this, I'm just going to import, let's say, the first 6 photos. You can check or uncheck which photos you want from these thumbnails. If you want all of them, you can just check all photos. Or on the bottom here, check all or uncheck all. It says there are 132 photos on this card. I'm going to uncheck all of them because I don't want all of them here. And I want to, let's say, just do the first 6. I can highlight the first one and then move my mouse over, hold the Shift key down, and highlight the last one. And now I have the first 6. And if I want to check those, the shortcut to doing that is just press the space bar. The space bar will then check or uncheck anything that I have chosen. So I can do those individually, or I can use the space bar to select those 6 photographs. Now, that's the source of the photographs. How do I want to bring these into Lightroom? So our workflow is going to go from the left to the top to the right. So a number of choices are available here. The first is copy as DNG. If you're shooting in RAW from any camera, Lightroom can copy those photographs to the location you specify and convert them to DNGs at the same time. That's the choice that I recommend. If you have JPEGs included, they will just be brought over as JPEGs. They don't automatically get converted in some way to DNGs. So I recommend copy as DNG. You can see move and add are not available to us. Copy is available, and that would copy in the original format. So if you're shooting a Nikon, for example, and you have NEF files, it would move them over as NEFs. It would not change them or convert them to DNGs. I recommend converting to DNG. So now we've chosen convert or copy as DNG. Now we have to say, where do we want these copies to go? So over here, these little windows, by the way, the triangles pop open and pop and close the choices. The first thing we want to think about is the file handling. And before we choose the location, I don't know why they put file handling at the top. I would think let's choose the destination first. But in terms of file handling, we want to allow Lightroom to automatically build previews, full window previews of these. And the choice that I recommend is standard. Standard will pre-calculate a preview which fills this window. It won't take up that much space on the hard drive, and it will speed up the operation of the program. If you choose 1-to-1, in other words, 100% zoom, it's actually going to build a full-size 4,000 by 6,000 pixel, whatever your camera does. It'll build that size preview. It tends to take up quite a bit of hard drive space. So my recommendation is standard. I'm not going to talk about embedded and sidecar. It gets into XML, and that's not where we're going to go right now. Minimal preview is what you just see the thumbnail here. So we're going to just do standard previews. And one more choice that we want to think about is whether we want to build smart previews. If you are storing your photographs on a drive that you unplug from your computer and you move to another computer, say a laptop, or you have it on your laptop and you unplug it and move it to your desktop, and you want to be able to see the photos and edit the photos even if that hard drive isn't plugged in with the originals, you want to choose Build Smart Previews. And Lightroom will actually build a preview that it holds on to, allows you to actually do the editing, and then when you plug that drive back in, it'll synchronize and say, okay, I'm going to apply those changes that you made to what I'm showing you from the original file. So they don't take up much space. Building smart previews is a good idea. So we're going to build smart previews, and we're going to build standard previews as well. The rest of the choices are unimportant. We don't need to rename the files. We don't need to apply any developing during the files. Now we want to choose the destination. And it will, by default, choose the last destination you used, whether it's your internal drive or some sort of external drive that you've got plugged in. If you want to create a new folder from within here, if you right-click anywhere within here, let's say I want to right-click on one of these folders, I can create a new folder and go out and just name a new folder, and it will show up here in the list. Right now, I'm just going to choose the webinar folder. And then the last step we do is import. So it's pretty quick at importing files. So we've chosen these 6, and they should come in lickety-split. Now, that's if you're importing from an SD card. What about if you've got hundreds of thousands of photographs on your hard drive and you want to bring those in? Okay. The way you would do that is we go back over here to the left to the import button, choose import, and now we look for the hard drive we want to bring in. So in this case, what I'm going to do is bring in from my desktop. I have set up a folder here from my desktop, and these are called editable JPEGs. So now it's showing me, by the way, these are grayed out because I've already brought them in. It's showing me a bunch of JPEGs that I'm ready to edit that are already on the hard drive. Now in this case, I like where they are. I don't need to make new copies of them. What I want to do is add them to Lightroom without making new copies. There's no sense in making new copies. They're already out there. Lightroom doesn't change original files, so there's no danger. I simply want to add them to the catalog without moving them anywhere. Again, the choices over here, standard previews, build smart previews. Now we don't have a choice of location because they're already on the hard drive. So in this case, I'm going to import 23 photos, and this is super quick because it's just importing them from the location where they already exist. So it's imported them, it's already building the standard previews for me. So now we have, in our catalog, 31 total photographs. And you can see them here as thumbnails. You can change the size of the thumbnails with the slider down here and make them smaller, make them larger. You can sort them by whatever criterion you like that's contained in the metadata. So you can sort them by the capture time, the order in which I added them, the time I last edited them, or by another criteria that I choose, whether I've picked them or given them a rating, or even just by the file names themselves. You can change the order from A to Z. Capture time would be the oldest file from days of shooting with the Nikon D1X, to Z to A, which is at the top of this window now, the latest files that I did. So you can have the latest ones at the top or the latest ones at the bottom. The one thing that it doesn't really let you do is randomly pick them up and organize them, move them around. It likes to sort them for you. That's never been a problem for me. It simply shows you the photographs in the sort order that you like. And now we've got our photographs in Lightroom sitting on the hard drive where they always sat. So let me give you a piece of advice here. Any time that you spend organizing your photographs into different folders on a hard drive, I think is wasted time. You can literally store all of your photographs in a single folder out on a hard drive. Just call it My Photographs. From now until the end of time, and import them to Lightroom using the add function and organize inside Lightroom. You don't want to spend a lot of time organizing on your hard drive. Now, I do organize into years and maybe even to months, but once they're out there, I don't bother changing the organization on the hard drive. Let me get a sip of water here just a moment. Now, another reason that you don't want to organize them on the hard drive is once they're in Lightroom, Lightroom points to a specific location on that drive. If you move a folder or you move photographs on the hard drive out in the Finder or out in Windows, Lightroom will lose track of where that photo was. And you'll get an exclamation point up here in the corner on the thumbnail that says, I have no idea where that original went. So you want to avoid moving folders around outside of Lightroom. Okay, now we've got our photos in Lightroom. We understand that Lightroom doesn't move your photos, it leaves them where they are. How do we organize these photos so they make sense to us? And Lightroom gives us the answer in collections. So over here on the left-hand side, by the way, if you're not seeing all your photos, if you're only seeing the ones you just imported, the reason is it's showing you previous import. If you want to see all of them, go up to all. Now, before I get to the collections, if you want to see one of the photographs full size, you just double click that photo. In other words, full size in this window. If you want to see it at 100% zoom, you click it one more time and it zooms to 100%. You can tell by up here, the navigator is at 1:1. If I pop this down, by the way, it gives you a little thumbnail of how much it's zoomed in as 1:1. If you want to fit it back to the window, you can press fit. If you want to get back to the grid, my favorite way of doing that is using the shortcut letter G, grid. I just press the letter G, it always gets you back to grid. So the letter G is your first shortcut that you've learned. It's an excellent thing to learn and keep in your head. Always G gets you back home. All right, if you want to zoom in more than 100%, by the way, if I double click this and zoom in here, I can actually zoom in, let's say 2:1, or even 4:1, 8:1, 11:1, whatever you'd like to do. Working above a 1:1 zoom is a little deceiving because of the way the pixels work, but we'll cover that more when we do our second session on editing photos. G gets me back to the grid. Now let's say I want to organize these photos. I don't do that in the file system. I don't do that in folders because I don't want multiple copies of my photographs floating out there on the hard drives. So what I do want to do is use collections. So let's say I have in these photographs, I have photographs that contain people, and I want to put all those in a collection. All I have to do is create a collection out here. Use the plus symbol over here to create a collection. In this case, I'm going to say it's people. And I'm going to leave the other things blank for now. I just want to create a collection called people. So I create. Now we have what you see is a collection called people. There are 0 photographs in that collection. If I go to my photographs now and look for the ones with people, here's one. I'm going to select it. You can tell it's selected by the light gray. If I hold down the Command key on the Macintosh, or I think Control on Windows, you get random selections. So you can click on the next one. This one really isn't about people. It's more landscape. So that's a people photo. That's a people photo. I'd say that's certainly people, and that's people. That's people. So I've now selected the ones that I think are about people. Now, if I go onto one of the ones I've selected, not the border, but the photograph itself, I can pick it up with the mouse and drag it over and drop it in the people collection. And now I have 7 photographs in the people collection. If I click once on that, I see those 7 photographs. Let's say the next thing I want to do is landscapes. So I'll create a collection called landscapes. I need to go back to all my photographs, not just the people ones. So I'm going to go back here and say all photos. And for landscapes, I'm going to choose sailboat pictures and Iceland and Canada and another Iceland photo, a Paris photo, White Sands, New Mexico, Portugal, another Iceland photo, and Italy. And I'm going to take those now and look down at my collections and drag those into my landscapes collection. And now I have 14 photographs in my landscapes collection. Now the power really comes in when you are able to put a photograph in more than one category. So you remember I said this photo in Iceland wasn't really about people, it was about landscapes. Well, maybe it's really both. So in this case, I know I put it in the landscapes collection, but I also want to put it in the people collection. Now it's also in the people collection. And let me give you an example one of my good friends, Michael, does. Michael is an avid fly fisherman, and he likes to take groups of his friends fly fishing. So he'll go on a group and go fishing for salmon or go fishing for trout or whatever it might be. When he comes back and imports his photographs, he has collections based on a number of different criteria. One of them is what kind of fish was he catching? So he has a salmon, he has a sockeye salmon collection. He also has a king salmon collection. He has another collection based on the names of his friends that he goes with. So he has a Bob and a David and a Stuart collection. He also has a locations collection. So he has a location collection for Idaho. He has one for a river in Alaska. He has another one for a river in Montana. And so one photograph could actually occupy all 3 collections. And it's a very powerful way to organize your photographs that doesn't require a lot of work. It doesn't take up any extra hard drive space. It doesn't duplicate your photo multiple times. It's just a great way to organize photos. So I highly recommend using collections. Now, a couple of the other options in collections that I skipped over. One of them is to create a smart collection. A smart collection is a collection based on a set of rules. And those rules come from the metadata attached to your photographs. So if you want to set up a rule, for example, that I'm going to create a collection based on the type of camera I was using, or the type of lens I was using, or the focal length I was using. All of that is within the metadata. If you say, I want to create a collection based on focal length 50 millimeters, Lightroom will actually automatically go out and gather all of the photographs that were taken at a focal length of 50 millimeters and put them in that smart collection. and maintain and update that smart collection as you add new photographs. So if those things are important to you, where you took the photograph, and any searchable metadata on the photograph, those kinds of things can be done with a smart collection, and you can apply multiple rules in a smart collection. Another question comes up, can I group or make a hierarchy out of these collections? And the answer is yes. You can create a collection set. A collection set is simply a group of collections. So think about, you can see this collection icon out here. It's a little small, but it looks like a drawer. It's supposed to look like a drawer from a file cabinet. If you want the file cabinet itself that contains the drawers, you create a collection set. So if I create a collection set called type of subject, that looks like a file cabinet. I can now put these into the landscapes and the people into this file cabinet called type of subject, and I can collapse and expand that. So I have collections now based on the type of subject. No, you can't put collections inside other collections, unfortunately. There's one layer of hierarchy, and that's the one I've shown you. So that is the way to organize your pictures in Lightroom. Don't worry about moving them around on your hard drives anymore. Just use collections. It's a fantastic way to organize the photographs and find them when you need them. Now, let's go on and take a look at how you actually manipulate or use photographs in here. As I mentioned, if you want to look at a photograph, you just have to double click on it. Oh, sorry, I clicked one more time. You just double click on that photograph and it occupies the full window here. The information that you get up in this overlay is actually controlled by the view menu. So you can't see my menus, but if I go up to view, there is something called the loop overlay or loop info. You're looking at what they call the loop when it's magnified this way. And you can change the loop info to whatever metadata that you'd like to display, or none at all. We can display one photograph here. By the way, you can go back to the grid by clicking on this, or going back to the single photograph. Again, 100% zoom, click once, click again to zoom out. Going back to the grid, if you want to display two photographs side by side, let's say that one and this one, you can choose the XY down here, and that displays two photographs side by side. This gets really handy when you're trying to color match two photographs. And we're going to talk about that and color management when we talk about editing in the second of these seminar series. You can display more than two. If you go back to the grid and I choose a third photograph, you can choose this and it will display more than two photos in this window. I like to spend my time in the grid and looking at one photograph. So typically I'm doing that and looking at one photo, zooming in and zooming out. All right, let's look at tagging your photos, which is a really great way to go through your initial edit. When I bring an import into my Lightroom collection or my Lightroom catalog, when I shot sports photography, I would take 2,000 pictures per game. And within an hour or two of the end of the game, I had to have those ready for the website of the team. So fast editing was really important. So Lightroom has a really nice way of doing that with you. You can, let's say we'll go up to the first of these photographs, and let's say we want all of them displayed. And we want to decide pretty quickly which photographs are worthy of additional work and which photographs we should simply ignore. And the way I like to do that is what Adobe calls a flag. So if you click on a photo, you can see a small ghost of a flag up in the corner here. If you click that flag, it turns white. That's called picking a photograph. Not flagging, but picking, although it looks like a flag. the rapid way to do this is to use the keyboard shortcut P, as in Paul or Peter, P for pick. When I'm on a photograph, if I press the letter P, it flags it as a pick. If I want to remove that flag, unfortunately, it's not the P key. It's U for unpick. So I've just taught you two more shortcuts. P for pick, U for unpick. And you can use the arrow keys to move through your photos. So if I'm in 100%, not 100%, but full window view, and I see a photograph that I want to edit, I'll hit the P key and flag it, and then continue. By the way, you can see the flag down here at the lower edge of the photo in this view. You can go through very quickly and look at a photograph and say, no, it's crooked. I think I have a better one. P, pick it. I like that one. I want to work on that one. I think I'd like to work on this one. This one definitely needs work. Yeah, I'll work on that one. Maybe that one. That one. And that one. Now I've quickly gone through and flagged them or picked them. If I go back to the grid, you'll see that those flags are there. And now if I only want to see the photographs that I have flagged so I can work on them later, I go down to the bottom here and I choose the filter where it says filter, and I click on this and filter for flags. And now I have 10 photographs that I've flagged. You can see them in the film strip at the bottom here. And those are the ones I want to work on. And I could even create a collection. Let's say I want to select all of these photographs. Hold down the Shift key. And I've now selected them all. Let's say I want a collection called Edit These. And I want to include the photos I've already selected. Now I've created a collection called Edit These. They are flagged. I can always put that filter back on. And now I can easily go and jump from here's my people, here's my landscapes, and here's the photographs I really want to edit. So tagging your photos that way is a fast way to know, hey, I want to edit this one or I don't want to edit this one. Now, there are other options, of course, for flagging. One of them is actually to reject a photo, which puts an X through it. And the other one is no flag at all. Again, I like the simple method. For me, either a photograph is flagged or it's not flagged. I don't need to think about rejections. So if it's flagged, it deserves further editing. If not, it's ready to. It's not worthy of further editing in my understanding. There's another way to add tags to your photos. The little dots at the bottom here, those are stars. So if I think this is a 3-star photo, I can just click on the 3rd star, or maybe it's a 5-star photo, or maybe it's a no-star photo. By the way, no stars is you have to click on the 5th star. You can, I know people who like to use the star method for ranking their photographs. There's nothing wrong with it. You can certainly filter on that. You can also apply a color flag or a color to the photo. The colors are down here in the filters, or you can assign an attribute to the photo by clicking attribute up here and saying, yeah, I'm going to make this a green. That's the filter, by the way. You can tell I don't use this function very much, but you can assign a rating to the photo. You can attribute the flag or the colors. Another way to take a look at your photographs is to look at the metadata that's attached to those photographs. And you can see from this that these photos were taken on across a whole variety of dates on a whole bunch of different cameras and with a whole bunch of different lenses. And you can actually say, hey, I only want to see the ones I took on the monochrome by clicking once on monochrome. You don't have to create a collection for this. This is already built into the metadata. Or I want to see the photographs I took in 2013. So I want to see the 2013 that I took on the Leica M240. Or you could change these, by the way. If I want to see, for example, focal length, and I go back to all photographs, here's all the focal lengths I took photographs at. And if I say I only want to see the ones I took at 28 millimeters, there are my two 28 millimeter photographs. So this is a really interesting way to learn about your photography. I had, a while back, I had the Tri-Elmar, the wide angle Tri-Elmar, 16, 18, 21 millimeter lens. Fantastic lens. And I used it for a year or so. And then I went in and looked at my photographs by choosing lens, wide angle Tri-Elmar. And then I looked at the focal lengths. And it turns out 99% of the photographs I took with that lens, I took at the 16 millimeter setting. So I said to myself, why do I have a Tri-Elmar if I'm only shooting at 16? And I decided to replace that lens with an 18 millimeter lens because it just worked out better for me and it was a faster lens. So things you can learn about your photography from doing this. All right, I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes and then start taking questions. How do we back up photographs? What's the best way to back up photographs in Lightroom? The best way is, remember, your photographs are not actually in Lightroom. Your photographs are still on the hard drive where you left them or where you imported them. So whatever method you use to back up hard drives is the way you should back up your photographs. Lightroom will automatically back up its catalog to a second file when you quit Lightroom. And I recommend that about once a week when you're using Lightroom, let it do that. It will prompt you for that. The catalog file is stored in the location that you choose when you set up your initial catalog. You can put it on the same drive with your photographs. The way I do it is I store my photographs on external hard drives, or an external hard drive. I have a backup to that drive that I do every month. I have a second backup to that drive onto an external drive, which I keep off-site in case there's a fire or a flood at my house. So I have that drive off-site, which gets backed up once a month. And then I have an online cloud-based storage location for my photographs. So I actually have multiple redundant backups of my photographs. And you don't have to do them inside Lightroom. You can use whatever method you like. On the Mac, I love using either Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper is a great tool for backing up drives. So I'm going to look at the chat window and start answering questions now. And let's see if we've gotten about 34 questions. I think we've got 34 questions, but keep them coming as we go. I need to scroll here to the first question. Question from John, can I easily combine catalogs? I have several that should really be just one. Great question, John. The answer is yes, you can. In the File menu, there is an option for importing and exporting catalogs. What you should do is open the old catalog that you want to move, export that as a catalog, choose File, Export as Catalog, and when it gives you the option, you want to include the available previews, and if you want to include all of the photographs with it as well. So export that catalog to a location and then come into Lightroom and choose the File Import Catalog. It says import from another catalog. And that will take the old catalog and move it into the catalog that you now have. Another one, any way to choose a NAS as the storage location? Absolutely. Any location that the Finder is able to see, a network addressable storage is absolutely fine. I would just make sure that your NAS is reliable and that you back it up. Can you explain why you'd use build smart previews? I think I already covered that one. Smart previews, again, as a refresher, is if your photographs are on a drive that you unplug, and you move to another computer, and you still want to work on the photographs on the first computer, even though that originals drive is not in the same location, Smart Previews allows you to do that. If you haven't built a Smart Preview, you'll only see the thumbnail. You won't be able to work on the full-size image. Another question about network accessible storage. Yes, you can have your catalog. You can have your images there. Brian says you probably wouldn't recommend having the catalog there because lots of data gets written to and from the catalog. Absolutely right. I agree, Brian. You want to keep your catalog on the fastest drive possible. I keep my catalog on the internal drive because on my computer, it's the fastest drive. How do I import all the files from an Apple Photos library? Can I create file copies on an outboard hard drive? From Apple Photos, you have to go into Photos first, select all of your photographs, and export the originals because they're stored in a proprietary database. So in Photos, and this will take a long time. I had a student who had 12,000 photographs in Apple Photos. It took almost 3 days for Photos to export those as originals. So you have to export them first to a location you choose, then create or import them into the catalog in Lightroom by using the add command, because you don't need new copies once you've already made those copies. When you take them out of Photos, it gives you the option of applying the changes you've made already in Photos. What do you recommend for importing photos to Lightroom from macOS Photos? Just covered that one, thank you. A lot of questions on moving from Apple Photos, I can see. Again, you use the import command after you've exported them already from Photos. Let's see, I was told to move photographs out to an external drive as an individual catalog. Now I have 40 to 50 catalogs. Sorry, Jim, sorry to hear that. You can, if you're not concerned about the changes you made to those photographs, just import the photos. Don't worry about the catalogs. Import the photos that you've got to a new catalog in Lightroom. If you really want to bring those catalogs in, choose the File Import from Another Catalog function. Ira reminds me that I think you can change the position of thumbnails in a collection. Yes, you can, but the minute you go back to anything other than custom order, you're losing that organization. There's no way to keep custom order as a sticky order of your thumbnails. Let's see. We have another question. Where was the behind the clock face photo taken? That was in Paris. And I don't remember the specific location, but that was a monochrome shot taken in Paris. Thank you for that comment. And Robert reminds me that's at the Musée d'Orsay. So thank you, Robert, for that. Anybody have a rock solid method for getting all photos across Apple Photos? I think we covered Apple Photos. Let's see. How do you tag the cameras? That's automatically tagged for you in the metadata. In showing them in the loop is the view loop info command. That's the view menu, loop info or loop overlay. Let's see, we have a question about macOS Catalina. I started to get the following message. The files are on a volume that doesn't support trash. Would you like to permanently delete them? The problem is if you delete it, doesn't go into trash, but is permanently deleted and cannot be retrieved. Is there a correction for this? I'm not sure if this is a Lightroom question or a Mac question. So that question came from George. George, why don't you follow up with me afterwards and see if I can answer your question. Let's see. Douglas reminds us that you can, when you're flagging an image with the pick command, you can reject an image. It's useful for getting rid of any images which are clearly unsalvageable. Let's see. Should I upgrade from Lightroom 6 to Lightroom Classic? It's a tough question. I would say the answer is yes for the following reason. Adobe keeps improving Lightroom Classic. They put resources into it. They add new cameras. They add new lens profiles. They fix bugs. They're not giving as much attention to Lightroom 6 anymore. So for the same price as upgrading software every year, why not get the $9.99 a month, have Lightroom Classic, and always have the latest? Okay, a difference between catalogs and collections. I think I explained Lightroom has one catalog, and that contains all of your photographs. One catalog at a time. That is the master file. Collections, you can have any number of collections that you want, and that's the way to organize your photos. Let's see. If your online storage is full, how can I clear the online storage? I assume that's the online storage from Adobe. Yeah, you'll need to download those out of your online storage and then delete them. Or upgrade to the $19.95 a month plan and you'll have a terabyte of online storage. If I've already created folders on the Mac hard drive, how do I undo this per your suggestion not to do it? Don't bother. If you've got folders out there, leave them. Just import them to the catalog and don't worry about whether they're sitting in individual folders or not. It's a waste of time to try to reorganize them. Let Lightroom import them all and then use collections to organize them. We are recording this. Someone asked if we are recording this. I shoot film and edit using Photoshop Elements, I believe, resulting in a TIFF file. Is there anything I should be aware of in my workflow? No, Lightroom loves TIFF files. It actually now loves Photoshop files. It's able to display even very large Photoshop files. You can move in and out of Lightroom, from Lightroom to Photoshop and back. I'll explain that in the editing session that we have next time. Got a question from Keith. How powerful of a system am I using? I'm using the 2013 Mac Pro, the trash can, the black trash can, with 64 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of blade storage inside. Lightroom certainly loves RAM. If you've got only 8 gigabytes of RAM, I recommend upgrading if at all possible to 16. I just decided to make the leap and go to 64. Lightroom really loves RAM and it really loves fast storage where you put the catalog. Not necessarily where you put the photographs, but certainly where you put the catalog. So if you can get an SSD that's very fast and large enough for you, please do that, and that's where your catalog can sit, and you'll see a tremendous speed increase. At the beginning, when I loaded photographs from an SD card, where did I save the photos? I saved the photos onto my desktop drive in the editable photos folder. That was the location I chose. Question, can I upgrade from Lightroom CC to Lightroom Classic? Yes, I don't believe it requires an upgrade. I think if you've got the Adobe Photography plan, you have access to both Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic. The difference, I think I explained the major difference between those. I recommend using Lightroom Classic. That's the one we've been going through today. Let's see. How do you set up menus above and below the slide grid view? These are controlled by these pop-up, these view modes. Whether or not you see the slideshow or down here, or whether or not you see these menus can be controlled in the view menu, and you can toggle those views in the view menu. When upgrading from Lightroom 6 to Lightroom Classic, is the transition seamless? No, it should be seamless. When you open that catalog in Lightroom, you should, in Lightroom Classic, it should ask you it should remind you that it's going to make some updates in the file format. It's not going to lose any photographs or changes. The most efficient way to store PNG and JPEG, PNG plus, I think you mean DNG plus JPEG images. Yeah, when you bring them in, by default, Lightroom will only show you the DNG. The JPEG will be there, but it will be in the background. In the preferences menu, under, let's see, in the Lightroom preferences menu, there is a choice for file handling, and I don't change this very often, so I need to look for it. Treat JPEG files next to RAW files as separate photographs. I leave that off because I generally just shoot RAWs. But if you want to see the RAW and the JPEG next to it, you would check this box. I think we're getting to the end of our time, our official time together. And I want to make sure there were a couple of questions that came in through email that Richard forwarded me. And I want to make sure I get to a couple of those. One's about exporting JPEGs. I'm going to cover exporting next time in our editing session. I think I covered having the Lightroom photographs on an external drive. You want to use that build smart previews. And how do I transfer photographs to Lightroom without them all going to the cloud? They're all going to the cloud because you're using Lightroom CC. I recommend switching over using Lightroom Classic. All right, so Richard, I'm sure you're still with us.
Yes.
Do we have other questions that people would like to ask, or how are we doing?
Yeah. You looked at all the ones that I sent you, right?
I did. I got some on email that I'm just being able to look at now.
Okay. There was
Brad.
one.
Why don't we allow people to unmute themselves now? And there's still 177 people on the call. First of all, for those of you who have to leave, thank you for coming. I super appreciate you coming and supporting LHSA. We'll announce the date for the next one. It's going to be in about 2 weeks. And then the next one, I'm going to go into the develop module and teach you how to edit photographs in the way that I like to use Lightroom. So thank you for coming. If you want to hang around and ask questions, I would be happy to hang around for a little while.
Hey, Brad, I'm going to jump in and ask the first question. This is Helen.
Yes, hi,
Great
Helen.
presentation. Can you tell us about the Ask the Experts program of LHSA and how we can ask questions there outside of the webinars too?
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. By being members of LHSA on the website, lhsa.org, at the top when you're logged in, there is an Ask the Expert link. You can type in questions. I'm sorry, you can't type in questions. In the Ask the Experts link, we have experts who volunteer their time on virtually every topic you can imagine, from classic Leica cameras to film shooting, to digital Leicas, to lenses, to you name it. And their emails are listed there under the Ask the Expert link. Feel free to reach out to our experts to ask those questions. I'm one of the experts. We try to get back to you as quickly as possible. I like to get back to people within 24 hours if they have a question. And we post some of the previous questions and answers on the website. So thanks for that question.
Brad, just for clarification, the Ask the Expert link is beneath the community, LHSA community drop-down menu.
Thanks. So it's lhsa.org in the community link, Ask the Expert.
Brad, this is George Lane. The question I had regarding trash in Lightroom, it was in Lightroom. When I upgraded my Mac to Catalina, I began to have a problem in Lightroom with my trash. And what the problem is that when I go to delete an image in Lightroom, I get a message the files are on a volume that does not support trash. Would you like to permanently delete them? Now, so what happens is, if I delete the picture, I got to make sure I want to delete it because it doesn't go into trash and it's permanently deleted. In
Yes.
the past and before Catalina, if I deleted the image, it would go into trash. And once in a while, not very often, but once in a while, I've made a mistake and then I can go retrieve it in trash.
Okay.
Now, what's happening is Apple is saying it's an Adobe, it's a compatibility problem, and Adobe's blaming Apple, Apple's blaming Adobe. And so
Okay.
I'm just wondering, have you run into this and what's the answer?
I haven't run into that specific issue, but I know what you're talking about, George. And let
Okay.
me show you a hint that you may want to use. When you, let's say there's a photograph, let's say this photograph in my, I'm still sharing my screen here. Let's say this photograph is one that I want to throw away. If I click on that photograph and I hit the delete button on the keyboard, it just goes away, okay? I'm not in Catalina, by the way. I'm back one in Mojave. If you, instead, if you right-click that image and you choose Remove from Collection, I'm sorry. You can tell I don't delete things very often. But there is an option for either remove from the catalog or remove the original file. And my suggestion to you is remove from the catalog, but don't delete the original file. Photographs don't, individual photographs don't take up that much space on a hard drive.
Mm.
So I would just remove it from the catalog rather than permanently removing, because there are old photographs of mine that I thought were too bad to save. And with new tools that became available in Lightroom, I was able to resurrect old photos that I never thought I could never thought I could save.
Okay.
All right, next question.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
This is Constantine, although I go by Paul. I asked a question earlier about if I've already organized them in folders, which was really a crazy thing to do, but I did it that way. And hearing what you've explained, so a typical scenario for me, let's say I'm dumping 20 new photos, onto, let's say I'll put them on the desktop of the Mac, and then I have to choose the destination. Well, now I end up having to sort them and put them in all those little folders. So it's sort of have become a bit cumbersome. So you said sort of leave it alone. Are you suggesting in the future I just set up a new set of collections, but there's no real way to easily undo that folder scenario, right?
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks. What I would do is choose an external drive where you want to keep all your photographs. Make a folder in there called My Photographs.
Okay.
Take all the folders that you've already spent so much time creating and drag and drop them into that folder.
Okay.
Okay? Then import that folder into Lightroom.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Using the include subfolders.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Now, once you've done that, you can still see folders in Lightroom. Can you see where my mouse is here?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can still see that I've got on my internal drive something called editable JPEGs. On my RAID drive, I've got something called LHSA webinar.
Right.
Okay, you can still see them there. It doesn't change that. And by the way, don't start dragging these around. You can, but I suggest not doing that.
Okay.
You can still see the folder structure. I care so little about folders that I actually close this triangle and I never look at them.
Okay. Fascinating. Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Next question. Jump right in.
Brad, this is Larry Kirschberg. I'd like to know where we can find the recording of this particular session.
Richard?
Thank you. Yes, we will link that as soon as we have it on a members only page, and we'll make that announcement probably in the next few days.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's an excellent presentation, Brad.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello, Brad.
Yes.
How you doing? I'm Bruce Dennis.
Hi, Bruce.
Yes, Brad. I wanted to ask you a question about importing all my photos from Aperture into Lightroom. I have
Yes.
over 150,000 photos in Aperture. What is the best way to get that done, please? And I appreciate the presentation. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Bruce. I started like you with Aperture as well. I thought it was a fantastic program. By the way, I'm a former Apple employee, so I have a bias. So it's been a long time, my friend, since I've used Aperture. I know you've spent a long time editing those photos in Aperture. So I don't have a good answer for you. I think that the Lightroom Queen, the thing that I mentioned at the beginning,
Yes.
I think if you ask that question or go up to the Lightroom Queen website,
Yes.
I think there's an excellent answer to that question up at the Lightroom Queen.
Okay. Very good, Brad. Thank you so much, man.
You bet.
Hello, how do I get in?
Yes. Sounds like Robert.
Yeah, what happens if I make the following mistake? I take an SD card, I download photos into a catalog, and then I forget and I eject my SD card. Are they now in limbo and I have to reload the SD card in order to properly store them on a hard drive?
Good question. So when you import from that SD card, let me just go over that one more time. When I insert that SD card, Lightroom says, oh, you've got an SD card in there. I'm going to help you import that. So it chooses the card. I want to include the subfolders as well. And remember, we chose copy as DNG, and we chose a destination for those images. Once we do that import, building the smart previews, right? Once we copy as DNG, it's literally copied the original files off of the SD card. Of course, it left them on the card as well. But it's going to copy them into whatever destination you choose. In this case, I chose my RAID drive. When I press import, there's no need for it to ever see that SD card again.
Got it.
Now, if you insert the same SD card and you've got old pictures on it, it will, by the way, know that the pictures are old. It already imported them. And you can choose to say, I only want to see the new photos. That is photos that I've never imported before.
Understood. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Robert.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, John Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. Question on, I'm a longtime iPhoto user, and now I definitely need to upgrade to Lightroom, I'm sure. The feature I liked about Lightroom or iPhoto was that you imported an SD card, created a file, then you could type in all this information. Oh, okay, that was listed bull, that was a...
Yes.
Is there a way to do the same kind of thing in Lightroom where you label a collection?
Yeah, so you can label individual photographs,
Uh-huh.
and you can use the keywording feeture that I'm showing you right now. And it's really smart. So you can just start typing, Lightroom info, and it shows up in these sets. So if you want to go through and say, okay, that's another Lightroom info, you just click Lightroom info and it assigns the keyword. Okay. I'm not a user of keywords, but for those of you who like using keywords, Lightroom does a really nice job managing those keywords.
Nice. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Brad, I have a question.
Yes, Miller.
Thank you very much for doing this. This is really quite wonderful. I have been very good about always uploading my photos, finishing my work, downloading them to where I like to store them, and then putting them on a hard drive and clearing my catalogs completely, aside from a few photos that I just tinker with on a regular basis. And my program seems to just quit out of the blue. And it always prompts me with the Lightroom unexpectedly quit. And then I get either the Adobe or the Apple, shall we send this along type of thing. And I've gotten to the point where I'll just write, this is ridiculous. Why doesn't anyone do anything? And I never get a reply and there's never an answer. Is it a user? Am I doing something wrong or?
Well, Miller, great question. I'm sorry you're experiencing that trouble.
Thank you.
Couple of questions. Are you on the latest version of Lightroom Classic?
That's a great question. I probably haven't updated in long enough ago that that might actually be the sole issue.
Number one, please, yeah, update Lightroom to the latest version.
Okay.
Through the Creative Cloud.
Yep.
Number two, make sure your Mac is up to date if you
Right.
if you're on a Mac. And number three, because Lightroom can now handle millions of photographs at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that I've convinced you to start using collections.
Right. You have.
I'm really hoping that you actually start storing a lot of photographs in your Lightroom catalog.
Right. I think I probably will. Thank you very much for the suggestions. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, somewhat. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
John.
I was the one that asked about upgrading. I'm a Lightroom 6 version user, and I know it's improved, but I seem to be okay with Lightroom 6, but I don't know what I'm missing. And as much as I love to give Adobe money.
Right. So, John, I don't remember how long ago Lightroom 6 was released. But what you might be missing are a couple of new tools, and really, really good tools, and a couple of, and they're constantly adding new camera and lens profiles, which you're probably not going to get in Lightroom 6. The tools you're missing that I'm going to talk about next time when we go into editing photographs, the tools you're probably missing are the new texture tool and the dehaze tool. And to me, these are invaluable tools.
Okay, great.
They're worth their weight in gold. When I show you next time editing photographs, one click of dehaze or texture can make a photograph just absolutely sing.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, John.
Hey,
Brad.
Yes.
Hey, Brad. For John, I want to just jump in. I upgraded 2 weeks ago, and another good reason is as you keep, I don't know if you're on a Mac or not, but as you keep upgrading the operating systems, they no longer support the version you have, Lightroom 6. So it kept crashing. I couldn't shut it down properly. I finally gave up. And then I had a really difficult time upgrading, by the way. But if you get Adobe on the phone, I ended up having to do a screen sharing, and they ended up taking care of it. It should have been an easy, seamless thing, but it was more like a root canal. But anyway, just thought I'd throw that in.
I know that everybody in the world wants $10 a month from us. But honestly, I used to spend more money just getting the Lightroom annual upgrade than $10 a month. So for me, it was actually cheaper to get the subscription.
Thanks. Hey, Brad, this is Jim Danielson. I had a question for you. If you're on Classic as opposed to CC, how do you share your photos? Like when you wanna show photos? Do you carry your laptop with you, or how do you do that?
So Jim, this is something I'm going to cover next time, but I'll give you a preview of it now.
Okay.
Lightroom allows you to synchronize your photos online into an online library. And I take my iPad and I run the Lightroom app on the iPad, which is free. And I use that to show photographs. So if you want to share a collection, let's say I'm going to share this people collection. You can right click, I think, hold on one sec. I usually do it by photo, but there's up here, when you click next to your name, you see that sync with Lightroom? I've got sync turned off on this computer right now. But if you turn on sync, you can just click next to the collection. Why don't I do that actually? I'm going to start. Oh, it only allows you to sync one Lightroom catalog. So I'm not going to do that. But once I start sync, there's a little icon that shows up on the left side next to a collection. And you can synchronize that collection with the cloud. And then when you go into Lightroom on the iPad, you're automatically going to see those collections.
Nice. And you don't have to do the whole, you don't have to do your whole like 10,000 photos or whatever.
Not at all. That's another great use for collections is, hey, these are the ones I want to share with other people, or
yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll talk next time about exporting photos and all the options we have for exporting. Yes, Skip.
Alan Kozlowski. I'm in the process of digitizing, scanning a collection of 40 years worth of transparencies and negatives.
Wonderful.
At like 50 or 60,000 that I'm doing. And I was wondering if you have any experience with Capture One versus Lightroom as a processing engine, whether there's any benefit to doing that. The organization tools in Lightroom are so much better. I have my whole current catalog in Lightroom, and I've got hundreds of thousands of photos in there. But I was just wondering, in terms of processing the original transparencies for import, is there any benefit to doing it in Capture One versus?
Good question, Alan. Thank you. I'm a former user of Capture One. I have used it on occasion. At the time that I used Capture One, which was several years ago, Capture One's ability to process raw images was superior to almost all the other programs if you're looking for professional results. I think the gap has narrowed quite a bit. And I think that Adobe Camera Raw, which is built into Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, is actually almost on par now with Capture One. It is not quite equal to Capture One, but I think it's remarkably improved. And if you don't already know Capture One, the learning curve can be rather steep. Okay. So my suggestion, by the way, I inherited all my father and grandfather's negatives when my father passed away, and I had someone else scan 11,000 negatives for me at 4,000 DPI. I brought them into Lightroom, and it was a breeze to edit those and get the results I was looking for.
Okay, thanks. It's hard to know because it's subjective, and a lot of people, there's a lot of proponents of both ways. So I was just curious if you had experience in that.
I would say, just as a summary, if you have the patience to learn Capture One, that program in the hands of a professional can produce, in some cases, superior results with a raw file. But there's a lot of caveats in that sentence.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation.
My pleasure.
Brad, this is Brian Ampolsk. And
hi, Brian.
Hi. First of all, I love your presentation. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next ones. And my question is this: I have a version of Lightroom. It's not Lightroom Classic. It is Lightroom version. It's just called Adobe Photoshop Lightroom version 3.2. It's from the Mac App Store.
Yeah.
And I've got photos in it that I imported from Apple Photos, as well as photos that I uploaded from my M10.
Yes.
And I want to get Classic. Do you have any advice for, how to best roll it over into Classic?
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember whether Lightroom version 3.x has this function or not, but you should go in the File menu and see if there's a choice about halfway down called Export as Catalog. If you have that, export all of your photographs as a catalog.
Okay.
And then
it's just export.
I'll be right back.
Okay. I'm not sure that export is good. Judy? Okay. So I'm not sure that export is going to do it. On the other hand, you could just try opening the old catalog in Lightroom Classic,
Okay.
and it might actually automatically convert it.
Okay.
So give that a try first. It's the easiest and fastest way to go.
Okay. I mean, another option, because I still have everything that I used in Photos. If it comes to the worst, I can just export the M10 photos and my Q2 photos that I've added.
Yes.
And just build a new catalog in Classic.
Yes, and when you export from Photos, make sure you're exporting originals.
Right.
Okay.
I'm, after today's discussion, I'm thinking I might just leave what's in Photos there in Photos.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. The reason I'm not a big fan of Photos, despite being an Apple fan, is they store everything in a proprietary database.
Right.
And it's quite impenetrable to many other programs.
Yeah, no, I take your point.
All right, we've got, so
thanks.
You're welcome. My pleasure. We're going to do 3 more minutes of questions for those 78 of you diehard fans who have stayed with us. We're going to do 3 more minutes of questions. So fire away. Clearly, I've answered every question. You're all Lightroom experts.
Hey, Brad.
Skip.
Hey, listen, it's been really great. I've learned a lot. And I have a couple questions for you. I've been playing around with Lightroom 6 for a while now. And one of the questions when I go to shut it down is ask me if I want to back things up.
Yes.
And up till recently, I said no, because I didn't have that many that I was working on. But when I said yes, all of a sudden they disappeared. And I don't know where they went, and I can't get them back. And they're not part of my library, and I just don't know where to look.
They disappeared just by doing the backup of the catalog?
Yes.
Okay. Number 1, check and make sure you're opening the right catalog by going to the File menu and choosing Open Recent.
Okay, I didn't do that.
Okay. Make sure you're opening the right catalog by doing File Open Recent.
Okay.
That might solve your problem.
I've got another question for you.
Well, let me make one more comment on that. When Lightroom asks you, do you want to back up the catalog? It is only going to back up the catalog, in other words, the database information. It is not backing up your photographs. So the backup will be fast. The backup will take up very little space. And the backup is a good thing to do. You need to back up your photos outside of Lightroom. Okay.
Well, what I was referring to is I've modified the photos in Lightroom.
Yes.
And those have disappeared. The originals I still have.
And you didn't move them anywhere on the hard drive?
No. All it asked me was, do you want to back it up? And I said yes, and they're gone.
Check that Open Recent and see what you can find.
I've got another quick question. I have 2 different M240s. Would the metadata show the difference in the cameras to tell me camera A and camera B or whatever number they use?
Excellent question. I do not believe it's going to differentiate between the 2 M240s.
Okay.
It will differentiate on, no, unless I'm wrong, I don't believe it's going to differentiate between the 2 cameras. Now, those cameras are probably not going to have the same file number synchronous.
True.
So you might want to either reset your file counter on one camera, or yeah, that might be the way to go, is to differentiate them based on file counter.
All right.
All right, we've got time for one more question.
Brad, just one quick question. You, George Lane, you mentioned that your recommendation was Lightroom Classic Photography Plan. And I'm not familiar with that, and I just tried to check out the internet. The plan I have is Lightroom Classic, Photoshop.
Yes, that is in essence the same plan. You're getting, for I think $9.95 a month, you're getting both Lightroom and Photoshop. Lightroom Classic and Photoshop. It's in effect the same plan, but you're I'm on the same plan you are. I also have access to Photoshop. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up now. I absolutely appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this. If you've got further questions, please go to lhsa.org, community, ask the expert, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Our next session will be about editing photos in Lightroom, and that will be another hour plus some time for questions. We don't have the date, the actual date chosen right now, but it's going to be in about 2 weeks. Look for the announcement in email and look at lhsa.org for the actual date and time. It'll be about the same time of day that we did this one. I thank everyone. Stay safe, hug your families, and we'll see you next time. Once again, thanks to our sponsors for their unwavering support, and everybody take care and good shooting.
Brad, thank you very much. It's a great session, and I see why we've got so much to cover in over these next 3 sessions. So be well, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye now.
Thank you.